Welcome everybody to Charity Radio. Hope everybody's keeping well and safe in lockdown. Delighted to have Keith Fox in our virtual studio this afternoon. Came across Keith on a podcast he did about 3 or 4 months ago. Fascinating character, turned his life around dramatically, really from the throes of addiction. So very, very interesting story. Without further ado, welcome Keith. How are things?
Hey Dave, hey, nice. Thanks for having me, and how are you to everyone in these crazy times?
Good stuff. We'll start again. This is round 2 because we were about 5 or 10 minutes into recording and it went haywire. So the joys of technology. So let's start again. So Keith, you were just kind of giving us a background in your own upbringing in Dublin. Do you want to just start again there maybe and just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, you were asking me where I was from, the fruit markets area. Yeah. I was born and reared there, and as a child, as a young teenager, back in them times, it'd have been the 80s, you know, a lot of poverty, a lot of working class people, you know, family members, and a lot of my family would have walked in the fruit markets. My granddad would have loaded and unloaded 40-foots, 2 or 3 a day in Shamrock, and I'd be down there, you know, visiting or picking up fuel for the house from my grandmother or my mother's house, you know, and I would have learned, and, you know, like there was always work there if I needed it, you know, and my grandmother was a casual trader, and she'd be at the matches doing head boppers, badges for all the GAA games. So from a young age, I was skilled how to graft, how to survive, you know, and at that time, growing up, I had a lot of different addictions around me of different things. You know, my father was an alcoholic, my mother was a manic depressant, and I had a lot of family members that were in addiction. So there was a lot of chaos around me, and the abnormal became normal. And like from a young age, I would have seen a lot of trauma, and I would have experienced a lot of trauma through my mum being in and out of a psych ward, St. Brendan's, up on off the Grange Gorman. And yeah, a very scary place, Dave. I remember as a
very
young
grey,
child,
like, isn't it? The building is
very
grey,
you know, one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Classic.
They got it 100%, 100 down to the cracks on the wall, the mesh on the wall, on the glass doors. And I remember as a young child, my family would bring us up on a Sunday afternoon to visit my mum, the times that she was in, because she was constantly having a breakdown, and then she was okay. So there was a lot of missing gaps of a bond building relationship of nurturing. That's what nurturing, you know.
Essential, obviously, for growth that you missed out on, right?
Well, it's the same when you're born. Like we get disconnected from the human. The mother gives us 9 months of solace. She feeds us, she takes cakes, and when we come out of the womb, the first thing they do is they disconnect us and take us away and put us in an incubator. So there's trauma straight away. Where if you see a wild animal, the first thing the mother does is it suckles. It suckles the mother, and it stays with the mother for months. It does not leave its her sight. But as human beings, we done the opposite. So when we're born with trauma. You know, the first thing we do is when we breathe wrong. We breathe from the throat, from the chest, panic. That's the muscle memory. So, you know, when you're scared in a movie, that's the first thing we do is we react and we breathe that way, and it's a muscle memory. But my mum going and visiting her in psych ward and seeing her the way she was strapped to beds, and I've seen women with pee stains in the bed strapped down. And I'm a kid walking through this ward, going to visit my mum, that she's sitting at the end of the bed, and there was no emotional connection. She was just from the medication, you know. And that was from a young age. I learned that trauma, and I just suppressed that. I thought that was normal. And then I go into the school setting, and because I didn't know what was going on internally, because I was a young child, you know, I couldn't sit easy. I was always flighty. I was always hyper. I couldn't sit still. And I had ADHD, and they never flagged it. So they used to just put me outside the class. So I was being chastised for an illness that was not my fault. I was feeling stuff that I couldn't verbalise because I had no words to verbalise it. So I was being stagnated, or what's the word? When you're being, I was labelled and I was put outside the class. But I learned that I have a lot of coping skills and I have a lot of abilities, and I'm very artistic. I'm very great at poetry, art, drawing. I'm a visual. I'm a hands-on.
And can I just pick up on that, Keith? Obviously, you had a very kind of traumatic start to your life. You mentioned in the previous podcast about the addiction and going down that route. I suppose what I'm curious about is, I suppose, when did it first start? When were you first exposed to drinking drugs?
Well, so this is where I was getting to. No, thanks, Dave. Yeah, give me a highlight. Yeah. Because as I started becoming into my 10 or 11, I started being physically abused by a family member that was supposed to be taking care of me while my mum was sick in hospital, but that person took advantage. And what it done was it numbed my spirit. So when the guys around the area would be sitting on a Saturday, they'd be playing cards and they'd be drinking. These were all the people. I started hanging out on the corner. I started trying to get into the circle. And before I knew it, I was getting a sip at this, so I was smoking weed. And I was escaping from what was going on internally, from the trauma, because I had post-traumatic stress, but I didn't know. I was on being abused for a couple of years, and I thought in my mindset it was a dream. And I used to have panic attacks where I thought the walls was coming in. And I used to try and, it's funny now when I do meditation, but I used to breathe through the trauma of the shock in my body. But I didn't know I was trying to calm my mind. I was, even subconsciously, I was trying to survive that internally. And I didn't know as a child that was happening.
But how would you? I mean, you're 11 years of age, you know what I mean? And I actually came across a brilliant, sorry to interrupt you, a brilliant podcast there recently. It was a 10-part series in Panorama, BBC Sounds, whereas George Gibney was about the paedophile in South Dublin who was involved in a swimming. He had molested a number of children, you know. And I suppose they were interviewing the people as adults, and they were saying, like, they had no idea what was going on. They were
no,
like,
we didn't know. I didn't
10,
know.
11, 12 years of age. I mean, how the hell are you meant to know at that stage what's going on?
And not only that, as I was saying to you earlier, it made me revert backwards, where I didn't trust people. I didn't open up. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't get dialogue with people because I was afraid I was going to be hurt. So I was building a wall out of fear, because that's what fear is. Trauma is fear. It's fear of being hurt. It's fear of being overpowered. It's fear of this. It's fear of that. And every time you walk into a room, you're looking at the exit. And I still have that feeling in my mind. It's still there, but I don't act on it today. But I used to just run from situations, from friendships, from relationships, from work, because my internal mechanism would tell me that you're not worth it. You can't do this. You're not. And this is all in my mind going. So, and then throw the ADHD in, and then throw the school and get outside the class. So drugs and drink were like a comfort blanket, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, you could numb the pain, obviously, and it was an easy out.
I could knock off the thinking and the feelings. I could disconnect, you know. But longevity of that, it's like you take 2 Ponston for a headache, and then you take 4 Ponston, and then you take a Ponston every day. The day you have a headache and you go to take the Ponston, they're not going to work, because your immune system is on
tolerance builds up.
Tolerance,
builds up, right?
yes. And I didn't see from a young age up to 16 that I was on a cliff, Dave. I was on a cliff, but I didn't know I was on a cliff, if that makes sense. I was stepping out all the time, going to that limit and then coming back. But at 16, my life started spiraling even further, because the rave scene came in the 80s, and the drinking and the way it changed and the environment changed, and I was growing. I was becoming into a young man. So my experimenting of life started expanding, like my horizons. You know, so I was in different groups of people, different communities, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I'd imagine if you're growing up in the city of Dublin, drugs are accessible, right? So it's on your doorstep, literally.
It's the norm. I always say this, I grew up in an environment where the abnormal was normal, where people outside would be having fights and they'd be stabbing each other. And that'd be normal to see. We're seeing people being run over by cars. We're seeing people dying in front. I actually seen, and it's funny, right? I seen a man one day. I used to sell papers on Queen Street Bridge, and this is how desensitized I was from sensitivity of what a feeling is about other things. I seen a man jump in, fighting with his girlfriend on Queen Street Bridge, and he jumped in and killed himself in front of me. I seen him getting took out, and I went on with my day. I seen a woman getting crushed around at the markets. A car hit a wall, and her legs were just squashed, and she was just screaming. And you see the way I'm just talking as if it's just a glass of water. That's what was happening because of what happened to me. I was desensitized because my emotional levels of what's empathy, what's compassion. I didn't know any of that, you know.
I wonder, is it a deliberate thing, kind of subconsciously, that your mind stops you going there because you just don't want to. You don't want to see it. You know what I mean? It was your coping mechanism at the time, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, because when I went into the fits of the traumatic, and the walls started coming in like Pink Floyd, the walls started sucking in and out. And it was always the same. And this is standing, I could be sitting here and it could come on me. And I was like, and thank God, I came through that. But my addiction started manifesting then. I was doing ecstasy, I was going to parties. There was a love scene, a love buzz. Everyone was loving about each other. And then when you go back to parties, the drugs start changing and people start changing. They wanted to come off the high on alone. So they started with sleeping tablets, with heroin. I remember the first time doing heroin. Like, on
the calm down, or you're on the calm down, you're taking heroin in,
yeah. And I've never, and I had family members and I concerned parent friends, and I always swore I'd never. But when you're in flow of something, it's very hard to say no with a people pleasing thing.
Did you start off smoking at first? Is that how it started?
I never injected, just smoked it. But David, I went to the extremes where I was smoking ounces of it a day. I went to the extremes where I was selling just for my habit. I was selling this, I was doing this, I was working this. I was like juggling. It was insanity. I was juggling everything and trying to keep normality. I was having a new son. I was in a relationship. The parent I was with, she became addicted. The house ended up getting shot up. Someone tried to murder me. My life was starting to spoil, but I wasn't saying any. I was just normal. I was just
what stage is this, Keith? So you started the rave scene obviously at about 16. Where are we at now? Like, how deep into the addiction is this?
I was touching on borderline, and what happened was how my addiction manifested was a turn of events. I was going with this girl, and she was from Summer Hill, and I had a fight with her one day. And the thing about people that have been hurt, they have a lot of hurt in them, and that can be channeled in a lot of different ways. And for me, it came out arseways one day. I was fighting with her, having an argument, not a physical, a verbal, and the emotional aspect of it, I went on my push bike to clear my head, and I was cycling down the quays, and I would have seen my mum getting hurt by my dad because he was very physical, and I seen all this, and that's more trauma. And but I always had that Robin Hood. I always stood in the middle. I many a time I took the being. Yeah, and then I had 2 younger brothers, and I took the blame for them. So anytime anything went wrong in the house, I took the blame for it. So if a window was broken, I wasn't even there. It was my fault. So it became that kind of, and I still have that. I hate to see the underdog. I hate to see bullies. I hate to see all that kind of stuff. But I seen this security guard on the Haney Bridge kicking a pregnant woman. She had knickers and bras. She was shoplifting. It didn't matter. It was the act of what he was doing, and there was people there. It was wrong. And I got off the bike. I was on a being fighting with my girlfriend at the time, and I got off the bike and I said to the guy, leave her out. And there's about 12, 14 people there. But because I said leave her out, he put her up to me. I lost it. I ended up breaking his jaw a couple of different places, and that wasn't enough. I ended up running away from the scene after demolishing him and another guy. And I'd have been into the boxing at that time. So it was very, very physical. And I had a lot of anger inside of what was, but I didn't know it was anger. It was hurt, it was sadness, it was grief. It was all that stuff was just building like a volcano. And that poor guy got it that day. And I went up the street and came back down, and I met a friend of mine, and he come down, and we went completely insane on a couple of different security guards, and I ended up getting brought to prison over it for GBH, you know. And that was an eye opener. That's when it spiraled out of control. You know, I remember going up in the van, roaring and crying because it was full of fear.
What did you get, Keith, or what was your
Yeah,
sentence?
I was put in custody for 11 months, no bail, because it was
in Mount Joy.
Yeah, so I went to Patrick's first, and what happened was the day I went up in the van, I was full of fear. I was riding and crying. Oh, my man, I'll be honest, I can talk about how I feel. And I was scared sitting in the me van going up. But when I went into the prison and seeing people I knew from the area, the ego took over, you know, and I was like one of the bad,
yeah,
a lot of bull. You know, I was scared inside, and my partner is crawling on her knees, boy, so she can't get. Sorry.
I tell her I appreciate the effort anyway.
Yeah, he said thanks.
Hi, or thanks.
Yeah, so he was in the prison, and prison you can get more drugs inside than you can outside. It's totally insane.
But even to get the drugs in Mount Joy, there was only a net over, and people used to be throwing footballs over. It's not. It was that easy.
Oranges as well, because they get caught in the mesh and it just piss off, or an apple. Yeah, and then people.
Was there a blind eye thrown to it? Like the conspiracy.
There was so much of it coming in. They were probably getting 1%.
But they were saying, like, look, if fellas are kind of smacked out on heroin, that they're not going to be causing trouble. So it was kind of, look, we'll turn a blind eye to it. Where if it was crack or cocaine, they'd probably clamp down more on it.
But the thing about it in Patrick's, when I was there, right, what happened was I was in Patrick's Institute, and it was like a teenager's social thing. You know, you'd be smoking weed in the night, and there was 4 people in this annex, like a room. It was the women's AIDS part that they converted into the men's. So the women that were doing the HIV, it was called an annex. There was 4 of them in the bed. They put 4 men in it. So this is in the 90s, you know, and I got a brainwave one night. I was on the taking ecstasy because I was on a swapping weight. Because that's what you do. You swap this for that and you get that. And a guy gave me an ecstasy tablet, and I was sitting on the bed and I seen a little crack in the wall. And before I knew it, I was on a taking the sink part out, and I was on a hacking around. I was on a making a hole, taking the air vent out. And I was only there a week and I was already escaped. Insanity.
I'm assuming you didn't get out anyway, Keith. I didn't read that book.
One of the guys that came out behind us, he came out face first, and it was a 20-foot drop, and he landed head first. And the night security on the perimeter heard the scream of him hitting the deck. So we got caught and we were really hurt. Like, yeah, you know, and so, rightly so, you know. And what happened was then I went from there, they put me over to Mount Joy, different Shark Tank, a completely different energy. People were just so you have a bowl in the night, you'd have to slop out. So, you know, if there's 2 of you in the cell, you pee into the pot. The next morning down to the toilets, and this is on your way to get your breakfast. So it was traumatic, like, and then everyone was in there, and there was a lot of heroin and a lot of people being corrupt, a lot of people being raped, different things. So you're walking on eggshells, you know. But
I'm assuming you need to kind of buddy up fairly quickly. Like if you're on your own and there you're a sitting duck, right?
You stick out like a lamb in a wolf pack. But I have family members and friends that I knew, and I was very handy with my hands, so that didn't bother me. Like, I'd die killing someone, I'd fight to the death. That's the way I am. But that's just the fight and flight. It's just that traumatized child still today, you know, still fighting to stay up above water in the mind.
And I know, Keith, from listening to the other podcast, there was another significant event in your life involving your dad, right? You were in a pub in Smithfield. Do you want to go talk through that?
Yeah. So what happened was my addiction, I got out of prison and my addiction just manifested. Like it just snowballed, and I was evicted out where I was living. I was ran out other places. I was shot. I was like...
You were shot at, really?
Yeah, with my son in my arms. The provisionals tried to kill me, because of my antisocial behaviour. I couldn't see I was very unmanageable. I thought because I was hurting me, I wasn't hurting anyone else, but everything around me was gone. Everything was falling around me. I was surviving like an animal. I was living, I had the skills of an animal. If that,
survival instincts, basically.
Yeah, and it was just my mind and my actions were totally insane. So what happened was I was on being evicted out of where I lived. I was on a breaking up with the partner because I couldn't go back to the house. So I was living in, so my dad used to open his little metro car. He was a roofer, and he used to open it in the night, couldn't let me in the house, couldn't trust me. So he used to leave a blanket out and leave it open. My cousin was living in a Granada next to me. He was an addict as well, and his mum lived underneath my mum. So they were about 100 feet from where the two cars were, and we were living in these cars. The people in the flats was giving us food, you know, totally. But what happened was my father let me back into the house after a period of time because he seen I was trying to make an effort to get help. And I remember one Monday morning, he was in a pub in Smithfield, Bow Darrell's, and I went up with no money, and I was, what they say, dying sick. I had no drugs in me, and I was craving. Yeah, you know when you need that first drink after the hangover to help you get that kind of feeling. And I went up to this pub, and he was there with a friend of his, and he's an addict as well, an alky and whatever. And my dad went down the toilet, and he says to me, he says, "You're dying sick," because I was sweating, and I was there with large bottles of Bulmers, and drinking acid when your stomach is already feeling like acid is not a good thing, you know. And and I had to play, you know, I had to put a mask on and play the baton for my father to give me a lent. But a little man come up to me and he says, "That man you're on the being with, I think he's on a falling." And in Bow Darrell's, my auntie fell down the staircase and she died of the same thing. Ella passed, bless her soul. She fell down and hit the concrete wall. My dad fell down the stairs, and I ran down the stairs and I just seen his feet. And I remember running down the stairs, reviving and giving him mouth to mouth. Not because he was my dad and I loved him, because I did, but because I needed money. I needed my addiction to be fed. Got him in an ambulance, got him to the hospital, and then got my mum to rob him, to take his wallet and give me £100 out. At the time it was pounds. And I went off using and didn't care about that, man. And that's what the disease of addiction does. It gives you no filters. You have no empathy for anyone. You're just self-centered, self-absorbed, and self-seeking. You know, all me. And it wasn't long after that, my father again, the next time, a couple of weeks after
through
that,
obviously then anyway, Keith.
And then he had another one. And I remember reviving him in the house. I was in the house and I was in the bedroom and I heard a bang and I come out and revived him. He's on having another one. But a couple of weeks after, it was the 4th anniversary, him and my mum. And my mum caught him with another woman and thrown him out of the house. And he drank himself to death. But the day before I seen him, I had an argument with him at the tax office where he sold papers. And it still haunts me today, you know. But I know he forgives me, you know, because I was there and I was asking about him and he was saying, "You're just here for your man, you're just fucking nosy," all that kind of stuff. Sorry for the language. Oh. And I wasn't. I was just asking how he was. And my brother that night, because he was sleeping on the steps, so he was drinking all day and then going to the papers and just sleeping and waking and just drinking himself to death. And the next morning, he was on my brother's chair. My brother went out to go to work. He was a scaffold at the time. And he was dead on the chair. And the funny thing, there was a man in Greek Street where he lived at the same time having a heart attack. So 2 ambulances came at that time. And we followed the wrong ambulance. We went up to the Mara Hospital and it was Christy Fagan from the same block where my dad lived. He was so we pulled back the Gordy and it was the wrong. So we went to James Street Hospital. And I remember this is when things just started changing for me. I remember going into the ward or into the hospital and the chapel was on the right and my 2 brothers just disappeared. And all I'm thinking about is, I need to get to the clinic and get me methadone. This in the middle of my dad. Again, back to me, it's all about me. And I'm getting the itchy jitchies. And I remember the doctor coming over to me and bringing me into the church. And he brought me in and there was my dad lying on a slab and he was dead. And I was like, oh my God. And that haunts me because I never got to make amends to that, man. You know, but a couple of months after that, I got the opportunity. I remember one day going to the clinic again, because what happened when I come out of prison, I had this brainwave. When I went to Mountjoy, I got on methadone because people would say, you get free methadone in here. You get different
benzodiazepam
it's I can't think of the name there. Just a little bit distracted. It's a pink stuff and it just knocks you out and just bloats you. It's like putting a whale to sleep. It just keeps you sedated and everyone is on it in the prison. So it's to keep them the aggression down and keep people suppressed. It'll come back to me before the end of the podcast.
Benzodiazepine, is it not benzodiazepine?
No. I know. And
It's
so
it's not like ketamine or like the tranquilizers. No.
It's kind of like a tranquilizer. But it ended up that I was going to. So my father died, and that was a couple of months after. I remember going to the chemist, and I had a spiritual awakening. I know what it was.
And what age were you now? Sorry, Keith. What age were you at this stage?
I was coming to roughly 33. Yeah, 33.
Okay,
I got clean
so you were saying 16 is when it all started. So you're kind of literally talking 17, 18 years
18
of like
years.
constant
So what happened?
drug abuse.
So what happened was when I came out of prison, at that time, when I was in prison, I ended up getting methadone off the prison for the time I was there, and I was taking other things in there, and people were getting visits of different things. So there was a lot of addiction so the template was being built there. So when I come out of prison, someone said to me, "You're strung out. You need to go to Pear Street and do a 6 weeks detox." That 6 week detox lasted 17 years. My doctor told me, "You never get clean. It's in your bones." And I wasn't given information that there's a way out, that you can detox, you can go into treatment centres. There's Narcotics Anonymous. There's people that have done what you haven't done. This wasn't told to us. I was told to go to a clinic every day because I couldn't give a clean urine. I wanted to give a clean urine, but I hadn't got the tools or the capability to get to giving a clean urine because I was never clean. I wasn't told, if you do this, you do A, B, and C, this is what's happened. So I started a day program about 3 years before I stopped. And this was it was about 2.5 years before my father died. I started this day program, macro, and it was up off Henrietta Street, and you had to be on methadone, and you had to go there 5 days a week, and you learned about the disease addiction. You learned about how to do computers, how to do lots of different things, art, all character
life skills,
character building stuff. And we used to do meditation there. And one of the weekends, they put it out one of the weeks that a couple of weeks down the line in the summer, we're going to be going to a place called Jambaling. It's up in Cavan. It's a Buddhist centre. How many people want to go? And we were doing a Friday meditation with Sean Dunn at the time. Hopefully he doesn't mind me saying his name. A lovely man, a really good guy. But we went up to that Buddhist centre, and I was just intrigued. There was a Lama there, Rinpoche, and he was giving prayers twice a week the times we were there. And I just sat in. I didn't know what was happening. There was mantras, there was chanting, but there was something. Something had just, even in the middle of the methadone and whatever, what we were all on, because we were all active on the day program. And I never thought anything of it again. Had a great time down there. Came home, and things started just changing slightly. I started taking less. I started swallowing less. I started being around people less. I started looking into different things. So my psyche was starting to open like a lotus. It was in the mud, and like a lotus leaf. A lotus leaf won't open until it's ready to open. It stays in the mud until it grows in there. And that was the transformation for me. And when my father died, it was like the next stage of what you're going to do now. And I remember going to the clinic. It was one of the mornings. It was raining the heavens. It was like, when you go to war, people talk about going to war through wherever, and there's no days off. You're marching every day. Doesn't matter. That's what it was like with my addiction. If I had a flu, I was marching flu. If I had pneumonia, I was marching pneumonia to get the next thing, to stop the mind racing. And I didn't know that the racing mind was the effect of subconscious stuff that was going on internally all my life. Stuff that I had never talked about, stuff that I had never divulged to anyone, stuff that I never cleaned. I never cleaned house. So when I was coming to this point, what happened was I was in a relationship after about 7 or 8 months after my father died, and through that time I was taking, my drugs started manifesting again, so I started going into cocaine and crack cocaine because there was a drought in Ireland, so the heroin was drying up. So it was like Ramadan and people were torn into different things, so I started experimenting with crack cocaine, and that was a different beast, because then if I had any morals or values when I was using heroin, because heroin, you're not hyper.
You're sedated, right? I mean, you're on crack cocaine, you're capable of doing anything.
Yeah, there's no filtering. You're just
much more aggressive, violent drug, right? From what I see in TV.
No, more cagey. No, I wouldn't say it wasn't more aggressive. More impulsive. That's the more impulsive. That halt, there's no halt. The stop sign ain't there. It's just go, go, go. And I remember I was with this girl at the time, and after my father died, I started going heavy into the crack and dealing and cracking. I was in Baggage Street. I was selling to prostitutes. I was taking over pimps. I was wandering around with samurai swords, selling whatever heroin I had to feed the crack cocaine. I was again juggling stuff. I was multitasking to the point of, and with my ADHD and everything else, I was like a fucking whirlwind. I was like the Wizard of Oz, when you come up out of the shed and everything's gone. And you're like, the fuck happened?
The gigantic sword.
Like. Yeah, when I got around my addiction, that's what it was like. I was left with all this, me, the feelings, the guilt, the shame, the remorse, the hurt I caused, the victim, the suffering. This was all when the drugs was gone. Because when I went to what happened was,
what was the final straw for you? Because I thought when you said you saw your father on the slab, I thought that was going to be the defining moment, right? You're going to cut
at that moment. It wasn't. It was what happened was, and this is the final. A couple of months after, I'm going up to Eccles Street to the clinic to get, to the chemist, to Dargan's to get my methadone. 16 years I've been going to that clinic. They knew me in and out, and they were lovely people and all, but for fucking 16 years.
But sure, it's a bit, like, again, I know they don't know the ins and outs of it, but methadone meant to be a short-term treatment plan for... Yeah, but the problem in Ireland is it goes on and on and on indefinitely. People are on methadone for 20 years.
But methadone was used, it was called Dolphin. It was from Adolf Hitler's girlfriend. It was named after her. It was synthesized in World War II. Against the Russians. Hitler used it to keep the soldiers going in the cold. And then 2 New York doctors synthesized it and became methadone. And Rockefeller, the governor of New York, said, there's too many addicts here. We need to do something about them. So they synthesized it so that they could control them. Okay, so they gave them methadone. If you didn't sign on methadone, you were going to jail, and there was no release date in New York, and that's where it began. So it was about control, and it's still like that today. Like if you have an environment of sheep in one pen, a lot of other pens around different are not going to be affected because they're sucked to that. Like if you're on methadone, you ain't going on a cruise. You're keeping the fucking clinic close by.
But I suppose the idea of it is that you can come off heroin without going cold turkey, right? So I suppose from that point of view, it probably serves a purpose. But I think the problem in Ireland, it seems to go on and on. Long term, it's just crazy. Yeah.
Because what it does is socially, it doesn't involve the people. The families don't heal and recover because they're still suffering with the same individual, just a different symptom. He might be taking heroin, but he's still isolated. He's still mamboed, and he's still a useless piece of life because he's no entity of any goals or beliefs or values because it's not being pumped into more day programs, more recovery, more awareness, more in school. Like,
but it's even getting the education beforehand, isn't it? It's to stop the massive amount of people getting into addiction the best way you can, almost a preventative measure.
Dave, now the way the world has gone, the way they're synthesizing different weeds, different things. My son 3 years ago was smoking weed for a year with his friends. He's 24 now. Had a nervous breakdown. At 24, I'm in a psych ward with him, hugging him like a baby for a year. Now he's on meds. Now I'm going to start training with him again. It's only taken him 2 years and he's still on his medication. They have only downed it a little bit and he's an introvert. He's amazing. But because of a tablet 50 mils of this. It's all about the substance to fix the substance. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You have to go into it to get out. If you don't know how to escape, we are escaping from the first thing, how it is, what's the cause and effect.
That's the cause.
The
Can I just go back slightly, Keith? Because
sorry.
Just I suppose, was there a defining moment that you just
Yes.
said, okay, this is it, I'm done? Where are we at with that? Yeah.
The defining moment was going to the clinic and had a spiritual rain. We ended up on my father's grave. It was raining and there was a cross. And a couple of weeks after, I got the opportunity to go, unknown to me, that I went for interviews when I was affected to get into a treatment centre. You know, we didn't know I was on doing this, but subconsciously something was bringing me, and that's my higher power. And I got into this treatment centre, and the first day, it was in Ballyfermot. The first day I went in, everyone got thrown out. Guys got out the window, they went and got drink, and the whole unit drank. But I didn't, so we was in the treatment centre on my own. So I was living one flew over the cuckoo's nest, you know. But something had me in there. But then there was Narcotics Anonymous, because I don't mind breaking my anonymity, because I'm okay with who I am today.
Yeah.
You know, words and all, you know. And what happened was they were coming in doing meetings, and people were coming in sharing that they were able to stay clean outside. Because it's easy to get clean in these treatment centres and in recovery houses. But
it's when you go back into the community, yeah.
How people in situations when life hits you, how do you react, not act? You know? So I was in there, and there was a guy that was doing yoga, and he's an amazing guy, Cormac, and he used to come up 3 times a week, and I didn't know what he was doing, but I was doing it anyway. And when I was lying down in Shavasana, corpse pose, I was feeling uneasiness at the start of the class, but then I was feeling calmness at the end, and I was getting a release from my mind. So I started taking up yoga when I came out, and I went from there over to the Phoenix Park, and I went to another place then. Like, I moved into a recovery house, and every morning I used to knock the CD on, and I do all these asanas, and I didn't know what it was, but it was a physical thing, and I felt good there, and then I was starting to meditate 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, but it was my mind was starting to stop racing, and it was slowing down. But it took a long time for me to find who I am, you know. And what happened
did
was,
you do that in conjunction with psychotherapy, Keith? Was there a lot of
Dave, I hooked teddy bears, I kicked teddy bears around the room. I've done all of it, you know. Good friend of mine, Jimmy, I won't say, because what happened was I was his client, and then I was his friend. So when a therapist is telling you you're a good friend, it means that you're actually starting to heal, you know. And he used to say to me, he says, you know how to deal with life now, Keith, because you know where you're coming from. And that's the key. If I know where I'm coming from, 99% of the time, I know that I don't have to return, because I have an awareness, you know. A friend of mine, Gavin, used to say, when you're in the know, you're in the know, you know. So I had the information. So I started moving forward in that. And at that time, it's funny, you know, the girl that I was saying in the relationship before I went to the treatment, we were having a child, and then my son died, and I believe circumstances and life changes things, and crossroads, relationships, work, you know, different things, you know, how you get over stuff. There's always crossroads that we come to as human beings, and how we act in them, and what's the growth, you know, not what's the negative. What can I see positive out of this? And that's the word hindsight. It's always great to look back. But over time, I've been living in the moment of life on life's terms every day, you know, with different things. And what happened was that relationship was gone. And I got through my son passing, the relationship breakup. And then my mum, she took a stroke, you know, and this is where my spiritual growth started growing. This is where I was studying to be a massage therapist, because my ego wanted to have women in there nude on a plinth. I'm a fit looking guy. This is why I was studying to be a massage therapist.
Oh, it's all coming out now, Kate.
Yeah, but the reality was, my mum took sick, and I was going to Pierce College. I was coming to the end of my exams, and 3-4 of us, friends of mine, one a good friend, and he says to me, do you want to come to Thailand and become a Buddhist monk? we're going to do a podcast, like a video. Someone's going to be filming us with a camera and all.
Well, you have the head
And I
shaved
just-
for it anyway, Keith, so you're halfway
Well,
there.
I have now, but I didn't have at
You
them
did
days.
at the time,
Yeah,
yeah.
I actually had a couple of comb overs. I was still holding on. I wouldn't let go, surrendering. But I remember going to my mum, and she was on having a stroke, and they were on a releasing her out of Mara Hospital, and she had another stroke, so she was paralysed. And I remember in the bed when in the Mara and saying to her, Mum, I'm being asked to go to Thailand to be a Buddhist monk, but I know if I go, you're going to get better. And she just rolled her eyes, because she always rolled her eyes, because when I said I'd do something, it was always something totally out there, but I'd always do it. You know, the same with the martial arts. I said, look, I'm taking up karate. She says, yeah, you got koyachi, she used to call it. Are you going to koyachi? You know, so when, but I became a world and European champion a couple of times at that, you know, and just before I went.
Well, that's probably your ADHD probably benefited you, because you probably focused fully into it and, you know.
Got lost in it.
And
that's
in
what
it, exactly.
And that's what happens when I get into stuff. We get lost in it, and I can still do that today, but I get into healthy stuff, you know.
Well, you're channeling your energy very positively at the moment, right? Keith, I'm just conscious of time, right?
Yeah,
we're on a limited 45 minutes. I wish we weren't, and we'll definitely do a second part, and we're kind of about 3 minutes left, right? So I'd just like to wrap up.
For going on.
No, absolutely fascinating story, Keith. So I suppose I'm interested to know, where are you at with your life now at the moment, Keith? You seem to be in a very, very positive space.
So the past couple of years, my mum died. She died in my arms. The whole body broke down, and since then I've been in transformation. I've been just doing a lot of yoga, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm nearly up to black belt in it already.
Don't mess with yourself, Keith. Is that the bottom line?
No, just come here. Do you know what? I still cross the road when gangs of people come towards me, because it's martial arts. It's not about how hard I can hit. It's how quick I can run.
All right, but it's useful for defense anyway, if nothing else.
Yeah, the best defense is run. You know, go in the opposite direction, because I don't need to prove on to anyone today, and most importantly to my ego. You know, I'm doing a lot of so the meditation place that I went to, Jambaling, 20 years after, I ended up in the Buddhist Center in Inchicore, doing the same practice with the same people. So talk about full circle. And I've went and lived in Thailand as a Buddhist monk, took Sacha, done all the right things over there, came back. My mum got benefit somewhat. I got benefit because I come back and start becoming a yoga teacher, Pilates teacher. Are we froze there?
Yeah, no, it's probably just my face, I'd say, Keith. So I was conscious. What we're going to do, we're going to wrap it up, right? There's definitely a part 2 in this, and what I'm going to do.
Sorry about this, Dave.
No, you're fine. No problem. It's perfect. We need about an hour and a half to go through a perfectly fascinating story. We're going to wrap it up, right? And we'll definitely get a part 2 in a couple of weeks' time. We'll pencil in another 45 minutes. We'll go into detail on
hopefully
that.
someone will get something out of it. And if they don't, you know, listen to another podcast or someone else.
Perfect. Okay, Keith, look, thanks a million for that, and we'll keep in touch anyway. Thanks a lot.
Have a good day. All right, thank you. God bless.
Enjoy.
God bless.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.